Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Open Gym Podcast. This will be episode 7 of season 2 in 2023. I can't believe the year is almost over. Bob, how are we doing
We
today?
are phenomenal. Uh, we're going to get into some footwear today, and this spans quite a broad range, and we'll hit most of the things that Nick and I have done in the past, physically, athletically, and kind of give you some insight onto what we think and what we would recommend for a given activity.
Absolutely. Yeah, some things we see in the CrossFit world and the weight training world, some footwear that you may be interested in or something that you want to switch to that may give you a little bit more support. And if it's something outside of our realm of expertise, we can give you some suggestions on where to go for the best bang for the buck or just for more knowledge to uh, to add to your arsenal when selecting the right footwear for you. So, Bob, in the CrossFit world, when you're running classes, what do you suggest for people to wear when they come into a CrossFit class?
Just a precursor. If you are brand new, I don't recommend anything until you can commit to, I want to do CrossFit or whatever activity you're doing for another 2 to 3 months or forever, whatever it might be, and then buy a new shoe. So if you show up with a running shoe to CrossFit, I'm not telling you to change anything until I see you for a month. It's like, all right, what's the next step? There are a few brands out there. Noble has become pretty big. Reebok was one of the first ones. If you're old enough to remember Innovates, then you might have arthritis and your knees and hips probably hurt. uh, Nike entered the world, and I remember a good friend of mine saying that he would not start CrossFit until Nike came out with a shoe. Quay, I'm talking to you. Uh,
Yep.
and I've personally tried each one except Noble. I've not tried Noble. Their color palette, their design doesn't fit my bill. I like something that looks nice first and then functions well second. But I have New
There we
Balance
go.
came out with a very cross training esque shoe, and a lot of the newer shoes that
Mhm.
have come out have started to mold their shoe around certain activities in CrossFit, one being a handstand pushup, the second being a rope climb. Those two things, when done with a running shoe, often just shred the shoe itself. And so these brands have started to just adjust to some of the common things you see in CrossFit. I know the Nike Metcon has come with a insole that elevates your heel, not necessarily for comfort, but to think about as a way to also be able to, if you ever seen an Olympic lifter, it is a completely solid bottomed shoe. There's no comfort or support, but it has a heel elevation, which does the help you in maximizing your potential to lift, whether it's a back squat, a snatch, or a clean. Nick, have you gone through
Mhm.
any shoe
Yeah,
that you like more or less?
I have. But we'll get into that. I was gonna have you kind of explain, let's say you're the individual that comes into class with a running shoe on, right? What would be the difference? And like most people don't necessarily know they're in a running shoe versus a cross training shoe. They just know they're in a sneaker. So what would be an attribute that changes when you go from a running shoe to a cross training shoe? Are there big attributes between the sneakers that you're looking for lifting potential versus comfort? Is there something that someone is just looking for generally versus from brand to brand? What would you suggest in someone in those shoes?
Uh, Absolutely, there's a difference, and the most important difference is that when we are lifting or doing something dynamic, and we will consider a snatch, a deadlift, deadlift not so much, but a clean, a snatch, a back squat to be pretty dynamic, and we want full control or full access to the floor with our feet. And what a running shoe inhibits, right? The running shoes are generally really comfortable and it doesn't give you a solid surface to stand on. So you're always moving your foot. If you're watching this on YouTube, right, you notice my hands, that the foot is never completely flat or stable. And that's what we're looking for when we're moving weight, to give you maximal stability, not maximal comfort. And a lot of these cross training shoes are finding the common ground. How can this be kind of comfortable, but super stable, fun to look at all at the same time? Uh, there's also the wide base versus the close, right? A lot of newer shoes, or a lot of, I'd say, old school shoes, are have a super small box, and you're just kind of constricting your toes. My hand is completely closed; my fingers are together right now, versus having the capacity to wiggle all our toes. And that's where a lot of newer shoes and newer companies, even these big name companies, are starting to adapt to that and creating a wider box, or at least a wider box option for shoe buying, purchasing, so that you have more access to your full foot. Over time, if you think of people who wear high heels, it's for the aesthetic look. It is not comfortable, and your feet are almost sewn together. And if you do that long enough, your foot adapts, and then you can't spread your toes. Think of coming out of a cast. If you've ever broken a bone, a wrist, right? You can't really move anymore because you've been stuck here for a month, and now you go to PT. Think about, I've done this with the shoe my entire life, and now I'm extremely restricted. And so wide box toe shoes were a big thing. Not great for, in my opinion, running, or
Mhm.
uh, too much. I think you do need some comfort when you are running. I think there is a health benefit to walking barefoot. I think there is some safety and long term concern if you're running barefoot over time. Just an opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that's where a lot of data showing is the right. We see a lot of people coming into fitness, either classes or sessions and stuff, wearing these shoes that are having more padding. Right, Hoka's always come to mind, and people are like, "Oh, I have to wear them because my knees hurt." And yeah, absolutely, I'm not going to take that away from some folks that have a lot of knee pain or degenerative joints that need a little extra padding. But we have to think about why your knees are hurting in the first place. And sometimes it's just because you've been in a seated position or sedentary, and now all of a sudden you go to a fitness class with a lot of pounding, and it's just new to the tissue that hasn't been exposed to stress before. So now you're thinking, "Oh, my knees hurt. I need to get protection for my knees or my ankles." And you throw these big pillows on your feet, and they're thinking, "Oh, I feel better. All right, the Hokas are the only shoes I can wear." When in reality, you may want a flatter shoe and just take a little bit easier on the fitness side of things and help develop the tissue that hasn't been worked in a while to help get healthier feet, healthier ankles, and healthier knees, which will help build up strength and stability. And now you've opened up the realm of footwear to a little bit more productive for your foot, so you can get a wider toe box to wiggle your toes. Don't have harmful bunions form or corns or anything like that. So we have to kind of be mindful of where the pain is coming from, and if the footwear is causing the pain or hiding the pain and also hindering process. So uh, definitely something to think about rather than just going and getting the most padded shoe you can possibly find. Think about why you're buying that shoe. Something that I love is um, I used to love the Reeboks, the Nanos, and then they started switching things up because the old school Nanos were so flat. I loved them. But then I would also have another pair of shoes I would run in. I wouldn't look for the hybrid shoe because I just felt the hybrid shoe was a little bit more uh, jack of all trades, and I felt like I was just a little too unstable when I was lifting, and it wasn't comfortable enough when I was running. But that was me. My feet are a mess. I always needed two different shoes. So if you feel as though you're not finding the right shoe for your sort of process that you need for the shoe, let's say you need a flat shoe to lift, get a flat shoe to lift, and then just get a second pair or something else that's comfortable to run in. It may not be worth it to get a hybrid shoe to combine both activities. But again, that's what worked for me. I couldn't find a single shoe that was encompassing of all attributes.
So I went through a very
So
similar
that,
instance where I used to run a lot, had a running shoe, started CrossFit, and well, I need to get a CrossFit shoe, of course. And once I started CrossFit, I stopped running the distances I was. And CrossFit, I think the most you're going to run is probably during Murph, right? 2 miles, mile at the start, mile at the finish. in a general CrossFit program, you're really not going to do any much more than a 2 miles. Some maybe, but not often. And over time, right, this is now 12 years later. Uh, through some baseball stuff, I developed probably some Achilles tendonitis. And running in a metcon, which is that hybrid, right? We we want you to lift, but you're going to run sometimes, and running the sometimes just never felt great. And now I leave my running shoes at the gym. If the workout is a majority of running, box jumps, burpees, pull ups, kettlebell swings, I'm going to use my running shoes. If the workout is maybe one 200-meter run or a few and then other stuff, I might use a different shoe where I might need more stability outside of that. Also, when I lift heavy, my strength training, I can usually just worry about my Olympic lifting shoe or my cross training shoe. Anything that has conditioning based isn't going to be heavy for me. Uh, and so I personally can get away with doing a lot of stuff in a running shoe to where I can control
Mhm.
my own body. I can run, I can do air squats, and it's not going to have an impact. And when I show up the next day, there is no pain com- because I ran in that running shoe versus running in that. I see people show up a lot of Chuck Taylors, Converse. I know you had them, and
Oh yeah.
I think if you go through a full workout and then at the end of the workout there's running, yeah, take your minute, change your shoes. You're going to have a better time running. You're going to have a better time tomorrow and later in the day from the lack of soreness from running in a running shoe. So over time, if you can put a shoe in the gym that is just for the gym or just for the running shoe, or I come and go in my running shoe and my lifting shoes are just at the gym, that is probably my long term recommendation for sneakers.
Yep. And now let's talk about some specialty shoes, right? We understand, hey, Noble, Nike, Reebok makes these all around CrossFit shoes that we can wear for class. But what if we're just having a class of Olympic lifting, or you're an Olympic lifter specialty athlete? What's the difference between a regular shoe and an Olympic lifting shoe? What are the benefits of wearing a lifting shoe? What are the things that you look for when shopping for Olympic lifting shoes? Because I know that they span a wide variety of price ranges, a lot of different companies. What are some things that you look for specifically, and what would you suggest for someone who's just getting into the sport? What are some major key points to look for when looking for a shoe?
If so, I'm a design guy, uh, I'm a Nike guy. I started off with Reebok. This is 12 years ago. I wanted a shoe really bad. I ended up buying a shoe because they only had one size left, and it was a size too small. And I realized I can fit into this. It's not ideal, but it doesn't hurt or anything. Main difference is you go from a completely solid sole with elevation, so your heel is raised. So it is a high heel. Think of high heels as being 3 to 5 inches. I don't know; I've never worn them. Whereas an Olympic lifting shoe is about 1 to 1.5 inches. There is regulation because they are part of a sport in the Olympics, in the World Sports Organization for lifting as well. So there is a degree that you can have, and it is limited. Uh, I'm looking for something that's comfortable. I think TYR just came out with a shoe that has a wide box. They're the first lifting shoe to have a wide box for your foot, right? So you have that full access to your foot to help you push off, to jump, and to land. Uh, I think if I were to get my next shoe, it would be that one. But the price here's the crazy part. The price is going to be between 150 and 200. These shoes physically don't leave the gym. They are not to be walked on the sidewalk, on any cement. They are only put on to physically lift. You might go to the bathroom in them, and that is all. And so they will last you 10 years if your feet don't get any bigger or smaller. And whereas a running shoe is probably yearly or 6 months, same thing with the CrossFit shoe. And so when you think about that investment, yes, it's $200 up front, but you end up paying over the course of, let's say, 4 years, what, $2 a month, $4 a month, whatever that might be. And so that's how you have to think about it in that
Mhm.
regard. So price wise, they're expensive for a shoe unless you're used to buying Gucci and Prada shoes. Uh, but in terms of everyday sports stuff, right? Yes, they are on the expensive side, but they are not going to be. You can't use them enough for them to go bad and to get destroyed unless you throw them at things and forcefully try to break them.
Sounds like personal experience right
No,
there,
no,
Bob. Yeah,
no, no,
you like to keep that
no.
under
The
control.
the slightly more expensive things get to take a little more care of it.
There you go. Yeah, no, those Olympic lifting shoes should be seen as a piece of equipment for a sport. And probably if you're looking to get those shoes, you kind of know that they'll be around for a while, right? There's a reason why you're looking for those shoes. You're looking to be a little bit more competitive in Olympic lifting, take your lifting a little bit more seriously. You just should be willing to spend the extra dollars because, like what Bob said, these shoes are not an everyday outside shoe. These are worn for lifting, will be stored at the gym, and they should last honestly for the rest of your lifting career unless you just get bored of them and want to get a new pair, right? This could be a $200 investment for the rest of your life. I would not sacrifice comfort for fashion in this case. Personal experience dealing with foot issues where that has come up the
So
case.
to go
So
back a little bit,
something to keep in
what you
mind.
asked me before, like where does this come in the recommendation pool or the hierarchy? First, like you need to go through an assessment. Do you have a perfect squat? If you have a perfect squat, you probably don't need lifting shoes unless you plan on to compete. And by plan on to compete, I mean sign up, put on a singlet, and go compete. If not, your Nikes, your Metcons, even your Chuck Taylors are going to get the job done if you have the mobility precursor. I'm going to use myself an example. I do not have ideal mobility. So, what the lifting shoe does for me, it enhances my capacity to squat and keep an upright torso, which you need for snatching and clean and jerking. But I don't put these on every single day to enhance my squatting. What I do is I have to improve my mobility and my strength in other aspects to get better. So I don't want to rely on. So if you were to tell me, Bob, just squat down right now, you would notice that I have a little difficulty squatting. It's not fluid, it's not perfect. I put on Olympic lifting shoes, it's fluid, it's perfect. But I don't always have my lifting shoes on. So my other parts of training are improving my squat, some stretching, some mobility, some holding, some isometric holding. And so you can't neglect your faults by masking it. It's like, oh, I'm injured. Help, Advil, 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 Advil. And so your issue with your shoulder is still there. You just don't feel it because we have some painkillers. And maybe I take a painkiller to lift once, and then the rest of the week I'm working on strengthening my shoulder. The same thing goes for any mobility issues that kind of come about. Same thing with knee sleeves, a belt, right? I can't just use a belt to lift heavy and then neglect getting my back stronger or more flexible and better, right? So it goes for everything, shoe
Right.
included. I'm not using an Olympic lifting shoe as a crutch. For me, I do compete. So it is part of my competition hierarchy and priority. But the other days of the week or the other times in the gym, I spent also getting better at my mobility.
Yeah, no, that's huge, right? That is calling out shoes as a piece of equipment. It's not there to cover up an immobility issue. It is there as a sport specific piece of equipment, but you still need to work on all of the mechanics to make sure that you can squat perfectly, even if you don't have the shoes available. So we've talked about our CrossFit shoes, our basic Nobles, the Nike Metcons, the Reebok Nanos, the Innovates. Actually, I have a member that just purchased a new pair of Innovates,
Right.
which is hilarious because we've had those for 10, 15 years. Um, but what about like, let's say the old fad of toe shoes or folks that want to work out barefoot. Is there any instance in your case where you're like, hey, let's walk around barefoot, let's work out barefoot? Is there a benefit to that other than flat shoes? Like, would you suggest that for anyone, or do you allow that in your gym? I know safety is a huge thing, and probably not when weights are around, right? But like, would you have someone walk around barefoot as a strength training
Yeah,
exercise?
just not completely barefoot necessarily at the gym. Uh, you can only clean so many times per day. And so if you're walking around with socks, awesome, right? It's almost the capacity to spread your toes, but at the same time, the sock does give some compression and support and stability. If we're lifting and I can physically see that the foot is moving during squatting, I will have that person take their shoes off if they want. Uh, to squat, and I've never heard someone say, "Oh, this feels worse." Everyone says, "Oh, this feels better. I can get lower. I have more stability." If we're and that probably, actually not probably, that won't happen if we're doing any type of conditioning. So when we're moving, expectations to move faster, I'd rather say, and it's a group setting, we're going to put shoes on so we're just safer. We're not worrying about any other people. Where a squat is kind of a fixed line. Every I'm in more control of everyone uh, than in a conditioning piece. Toe shoes, I'd say, yeah. If you have to understand what your foot health or where it is. So I've noticed. So I have an extremely flat shoe now. I wouldn't say it's a Chuck Taylor or a Converse, but it's not a Metcon. And I've noticed that on my bad side, when I walk, my foot turns in slightly. And that's created pain into the knee. And when I do walk, I am extremely mindful of straightening that foot out. And so I think we take for granted walking and we just go. And we attribute any issues in the hip or the knee or the ankle with something else versus how is my gait. And so with the flat shoe, I can press down pinky to big toe each step and I can make sure I'm looking down. I'm also walking moose, that my knee is aligned with my ankle and my ankle's straight and not curving any direction, because I know that is one of the reasons that I might be in constant pain. And so just being mindful of how you walk, I think I think if we I think we get to a point of age where, oh, my knee hurts, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, put this insole into your foot, and now you're walking on sand the entire time. Yeah, your knee is not your hip, your knee, your foot's not going to feel great if you walk on the beach all day, except it's cement, and you're just on a Bosu ball walking every step of the way. For those that don't know what a Bosu ball is, it is a thing that you can balance on that is not stable by any means necessary. And so it's finding the happy medium. Am I saying you shouldn't walk around in your running shoe? Uh, I know sometimes when I put on my complete flat soled shoe and I walk a ton, I'm sore. So it's just noticing, all right, well, I'm going to walk 5 miles today. Let me find the happy medium. I'll put on my training shoe. 5 miles is kind of like training. Uh, I'm walking to the store that's 3 blocks away. I can put on the flat soled shoe. And so it's just understanding what you're about to do and where you're going. But I think just avoiding super amounts of padding in your shoe. And I don't care if you're 80 years old. Uh, it it inhibits your opportunity to get stronger in that position.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's putting in more insoles or buying a shoe with a larger pad is just putting a bigger band-aid on an issue that, unless there's a structural problem that needs to be addressed by either surgeon or serious PT, right? You're just saying, oh, something hurts, here's a quick fix for it, rather than thinking, all right, we could probably strengthen the shoe a little bit by dealing with this pain for maybe a couple weeks barefoot and allowing some musculature to build up between the toes and the ankle and the foot structure and things like that. but instead we're just going to go for a quick fix, which you'll always need a bigger fix down the line because your body will accumulate to the fix that you're giving it, right? So now all of a sudden you're 80 years old and you have knee pads on and Hokas and moon boots and all this crap to take weight off your joints, when in reality you could have just strengthened a little bit in the first place and solved this issue. Again, this is assuming you don't have degenerative issues in your joints and it's just there because of a weakness that needs to be fixed. um, yeah, absolutely. Shoes should be seen as a little bit of a tool for your fitness. And I know Bob and I are tossing out a bunch of different pairs, and I don't want you guys to assume that you need to go buy 6 different pairs of shoes, although I'm sure that would be music to some folks' ears to go out shoe shopping. But again, you want to know what you're using your shoe for and buy the best case
Yeah.
scenario for that sneaker. If you have the ability just to buy one pair and that's going to be your fitness pair, think about the fitness that you're doing on an everyday basis. I know a lot of people would rather have a flat shoe in a CrossFit gym and just know their limitations when it comes to running. I know Bob wouldn't have an issue. I will say this, maybe he will. If you came up to him and said, "Hey, Bob, I have a really flat shoe on. I just don't think I can run around the block today. Can I do a substitute on the assault bike?" I don't
I
think
don't
he'd
think
have a
anyone
problem with
would.
that. It's a
I don't think
warranted
anyone would
excuse.
recommend the assault bike, but we can row. We can row. Yeah.
Right? So just find the footwear. If you have the ability to buy 2 pairs and one can be specialty for Olympic lifting and the other one's a little bit for running, that's awesome. Just know why you're buying the shoe and understand the purpose behind it. It is a tool to exemplify either fitness or lifting or something along those lines. I think it's something to be warranted, especially because in fitness, we don't have a lot of other pieces of equipment, right? So shoes and footwear are important, and we wear shoes throughout other parts of our life, and we should understand what our shoe is doing to us, and if we can make it better for our feet, which upstream is our knee and our hips, make sure everything's healthy. It's something we need to take a moment and think about for our long-term health. Bob, anything else you'd like to add for this footwear
No, I think
conversation?
we've hit the majority, or at least the majority of what we wanted to speak upon. And if you're brand new into any new thing fitness related, give yourself a month. If you want to commit to that thing, then buy a new shoe. You know, if I joined boxing, I wouldn't buy a boxing shoe right away. I would wait to see, oh, I actually want to do this and get better at it. Then I'll buy a boxing shoe. Same thing goes for running, CrossFit, whatever it might be. Keep that in mind. Once you're like, oh, I like this, I want to commit to it, then go purchase and invest in a shoe.
Huge, huge piece of advice. And if you want to, save up a couple bucks and personalize it, get some different laces. It's a great way to personalize it. I love sparkly things. I'll throw fucking confetti laces on my sneakers all day long. All right. But yeah, guys, awesome. Hope you enjoyed the work and the conversation today about shoes, footwear. If you have any other pieces of comments or questions, please let us know. Send us an email, send us a message online. We'll be happy to help you out with that. And Bob, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope everyone listening has a great rest of their day. And we will see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.